let's talk about people going on mission trips, right? Because
Yep.
this is where I think a lot of our people that are in the churches that experience it, they want to go on mission trips. They go and they're bringing in these goods, right? They're helping people, but how much of a difference are we making? Now, you've already said that we've seen poverty begin to drop, extreme poverty. Are those the results? I mean, yes, Western capitalism has gone to in societies, but when we go into a culture and we share Jesus and we're bringing these material goods, are we actually helping or are we hurting people? I mean, really, that's the thesis of the book, right? When helping hurts, because if we don't help in the right way, we
That's
can
it.
actually be causing long-term effect.
Okay. So if go back to the original question we talked about, what is poverty? If poverty is about a lack of material resources, then a short-term missions trip goes and hurls out shoes and other kinds of things. I got to be careful here. That's the solution. That's easy. To take on a larger scale, we should just get airplanes and fly all over Africa and drop stuff out the bottom of the airplanes on people. But I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't, because poverty isn't fundamentally about a lack of material resources. Africa's full of natural resources. It's full of them. You're from Chicago, man. You got nothing compared to most countries in Africa in terms of good natural resources. You're stuck with the bottom of Lake Michigan and the bears. It's much better to be in most parts of Africa than it is in Chicago, by far. You got alewives rotting on the shores of Lake Michigan and smelling everything up. Chicago is a wasteland, man. You
You're just digging a hole. I mean, you were doing so good.
Africa's got a lot of natural resources. There's
It
parts
does.
that are desert, but it has a lot of natural resources. The issue isn't fundamentally about a lack of resources. The issue has to do with how people understand their relationship to God, self, others, and creation. And those relationships are severely broken, both because of lies in various forms of African traditional religion, and I would argue because of what colonialism did. It's the fall happened.
Mm-hmm.
The fall. Okay, you're getting me. Look, right now, the right now the U.S. church is seriously divided. Are people poor because of social oppression, or are they poor because of personal sin? This is dividing American culture. It's dividing the American church. This is the stupidest argument in all of human history. Go into your churches and ask kids in Sunday school, in kindergarten, what did the fall affect? And they're going to say everything. Well, then what happens when they grow up? Somehow we become Republicans and Democrats. Dude, the fall affects everything. Of course, individuals are broken. Of course, systems are broken. Of course, it should be a softball. So when we go into a place like Africa, what we ought to be asking is, why are people's relationships with God, self, others, and the rest of creation broken? That's the question. We ought to say to ourselves, what the church of all ages has said: individual sin, the flesh; broken systems, the world; and Satan's attacks, the devil, the world, the flesh, and the devil. This is the theology of the church throughout all ages. Now, are you going to solve the world, the flesh, and the devil by handing out shoes on a 1-week missions trip? You're not. It's ridiculous. It's a very small thing in the larger story of the world, the flesh, and the devil. You cannot solve poverty in a short-term missions trip, but you can make it worse. Here's why. The vast majority of people around the world who are poor are suffering from a marred identity. They've lost a sense of who they are as image bearers of God Almighty. Both their religious perspective and their experience with colonialism has confirmed in them that they are less than human, that they can't affect change in their environments, that the world is controlled by outside forces, either white people or demons. They can't affect change in their lives. And so we rush in on a short-term missions trip, hurling around resources, taking over the local vacation Bible school with our puppets. We run in and we take over and hurl resources around. And what it does is it confirms in them what they're already feeling. I'm less than human. I can't do anything. Outside forces run the world. White people run the world. And so our very act of compassion confirms in people the very thing that's paralyzing them. that
Mm.
they're less than human, they can't affect change. And so what we've got to do is change our approach to an approach that says you're created in the image of God. You have an inherent dignity and worth. You are called to steward those gifts. You are called to do something. How can we encourage you to do that more effectively? It's a completely different approach.